Committee.
You got it. I can sit myself.
This is a meeting of the Township Committee, May 6, 2013. The notice requirements provided for in the Open Public Meetings Act have been satisfied. Notice that this meeting was properly given by transmission to the Asbury Park Press, the Star Ledger, the Independent, and the Two River Times, and by posting at the Middletown Township Municipal Building and filing with the Township Clerk on January 11, 2013. Committeeman Fiore?
Here.
Committeeman Rousseau?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Murray?
Here.
Committeeman Senabrino?
Here.
Mayor Shaw?
Here.
Please rise for the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I'd like to ask for a moment of silence while the troops are running worldwide defending our freedoms, constitutions, and way of life. Thank you. Our first item on tonight's agenda, we have the 2013 budget. We have a public hearing for resolution, budget resolution 13-106, the 2013 municipal budget.
Okay. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak to the municipal budget? See? Have a quick drink.
I have a number of questions, most are just for my information so that I understand what's in certain line items on the budget. So I'll just go through and I know it's on here. General question with regard to, for example, on sheet 9 of the budget, you know, where you have, you don't have entries. Is that because we're not expecting revenue for a particular line item, or we just don't know what it is yet?
No. If you see nothing, there is nothing.
Okay, so we're not expecting anything for the year for those
Well, I
items?
mean, what are you talking about? The grant?
Clean Communities Program for the
Well, it
service?
could be either. We don't have a reward yet. As a matter of fact, some of them, we may have received awards since we introduced.
Okay, but so this could be updated?
It could be updated between now and the end of the year.
Okay. On sheet 7, the Board of Education entry. Just wondering what that was.
That's for fuel. It's a shared service that we do with them for fuel.
For fuel?
They purchase fuel from us.
So a question on page sheet 5, watershed moratorium offset. It's a small amount, but I was just wondering what it was.
It comes with our state aid, so they just throw it in.
Okay.
I'm not sure how they calculate it. It's the same amount for the last several years.
Okay. I guess I'm going a little bit backwards here, out of order. Page sheet 4, under fees and permits, I was wondering, that's roughly $550,000. Does that include developers escrow?
These are only the fees that we collect by an ordinance, where there's a fee ordinance or a cost for a license or a permit or whatever. Developers escrow will be somewhere. It's not a budget. It's not a budget. Developers escrow is not a budgetary item. It goes into a trust fund.
Okay, so that's not included in this budget, nor
Not at all.
any amounts paid from that account?
Nope.
No, those are just charged off to various professionals that fees are intended to cover.
Okay. On sheet, I see on sheet, if you look at sheet 3 and then compare it to sheet
sheet 3B1, reserve for uncollected taxes. On sheet 3, it's 800,000. On sheet 3B1, it's 500,000.
Right.
What am I missing? Why the difference?
We had some properties that we did not collect on. So
Yeah, but the amount is different on each. Isn't it supposed to be the same year that I'm looking at?
I'm not sure. Can we look at it? 3B?
3B1 and 3B.
No, because
And three, sorry.
3B1,
And 3.
3 is current year. Well, is it? Let's see.
So on sheet 3, line 3, it says 800,000, but on sheet...
Wait, hold on, wait a second. I'm looking at 3. On 3, this is summary of the current year's budget, okay? On 3A, it is last year's. So if you want to see those two numbers, go to sheet 30, and you can see the same two numbers that you're seeing, one for 2013 and one for 2012.
Wait a minute, no, I'm on sheet...
I know, but if you want to see where they're coming from, go to sheet 30.
Okay.
And you'll be able to see where one is from 2012 and one is from 2013.
Okay.
What you're seeing on sheet B1 is 2012.
3B1 is 2012. Give me a second, this is double-sided. On sheet 10, the capital fund surplus, is that money left over from bonded money or notes that were issued that were not used for capital projects?
Part of that money was money that we had decided several years ago when we canceled some of the projects out there, the fields projects and whatnot. We were not planning on using it, so we put money aside to cover the debt service from year to year for the life of the bond, which was 10 years. So basically, that's where that money's coming from. Actually, next year, you're going to see it coming from a reserve for debt service, which just changed the name. The other money that's coming out is premium money that we received when we issued our notes, and you put it in, it's part of the capital surplus. That also, next year, may be able to be pulled out again. Two different auditors require two different things. So my discussion with our current auditors are not going to allow me to separate that out. So you won't see capital fund surplus, you'll see different reserves. As a matter of fact, the reserves are listed on there from previous years. It's just that at the end of last year, I was not able to reserve the same way.
Yeah, could you throw the microphone a little closer? Because I'm having trouble facing that direction.
Okay.
Okay. Also on that page on sheet 10, sale of property. I know we have some property that's expected to be sold this month. So that line item listed seems low to me, 150,000. Won't that increase by about $1 million after that sale this month?
Would love it. You know something we don't. Are you going to bid on it?
Aren't those 1 acre properties, and aren't there 3 of them?
No,
I'm going based on what you said values are.
there's 3 building lots that are about a third of an acre, quarter to a third of an acre
Each?
each.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought they were a full acre. I'm talking about the ones on Union.
Yeah, they're small.
Even if they were,
$1 million. We'll sell it to them.
Yeah, and it's actually going to be in June.
June 13th.
Okay. I just looked at, on sheet 12, it just looks like on the township committee, under township committee salary, it looks like the mayor and secretary was moved over to administration. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Question also regarding that last column, where it says, expended 2012, reserved. Does that mean it's still in reserve, and if so, why?
Which line?
Just that the general last column where it says expended 2012, then you have paid or charged, and then the last column is reserved.
Where are you
Does that mean
referring
current?
to? What page?
Just many of the pages. I'm on page 19, so you can
Okay.
page 19.
So in the appropriation side, that reserve is our 2012 reserve budget, which we keep for 1 year in reserve, so that if any bills come in for the next year, we have the money to pay for it from the previous year. It's in every budget. Unless we cancel the ordinance, it just continues on the reserve for 1 year.
Up until when, the end of the year?
Yep.
Okay, on sheet 15, just looking at the numbers down at the bottom under insurance.
Page 18?
Sheet 15.
Which 15? There's like 5.
Just 15, not 15 days, just
Okay.
15. So it's insurance, the last 3 lines.
Mm-hmm.
All right. There was a 6.8% increase in the general liability figure, and I'm assuming that's the increase in premium for the JIP. Anybody know what's driving that? Did we look into any other insurance?
It may have been, see, we're self-insured, even though we're in part of the JIP. The JIP basically takes our history from the previous year and decides our new policy for the next year. And we were getting awfully close to the top number, so we have a high deductible. So when you add the two together, it was basically just an exact $50,000 increase. So that's
My understanding was that it was actually a premium. I guess it's just based on the retrospectively rated.
Yeah, it's based on our history from the previous year. It's based on
Based on everybody.
yeah, that's in the JIF, but it's also calculated with what our portion of it is, and that's how we get allocated our cost. But in essence, what you're seeing there is that I just thought we were kind of close, getting it close last year, so I raised it by $50,000.
And then the group insurance benefits line, that's increased by 7%. You did touch on that, Mr. Giseni, when you did the presentation some weeks back. And I'm wondering what's driving the increase.
Obamacare.
Well, what's driving the increase is
Now,
just the
specifically-
cost of, every year they renegotiate fees. We may have a few more cases 1 year than the other. We're self-insured, so.
Let me be more specific. I'm wondering if it's, health insurance or prescription, did we actually do an
It's
analysis,
all.
break it down?
It's all claims, so it's in all the categories. We raised it up in all 3 categories. Dental actually we kept the same, but in prescription and in healthcare claims, we had to raise it. So I may have even raised it a little bit more in prescription and less in healthcare.
Okay, so are we doing, that's a pretty significant increase and it's
You should
continuing.
see what,
6%?
you should see fully insured plan. I think that's,
Look at the state health
that's,
department.
you should see a
All
fully
right, well, I'm
insured.
asking if an analysis has been really done.
Yeah.
6%
That's
increase.
private.
And we've been consistently in that range. Maybe a little lower some years and a little higher, but between 4 and 8% is, from a township point of view, I'll take that any, because the other plans out there are way higher.
You're covering up to 26 years old now. It doesn't make your claims any better. It doesn't. It's not that.
No, it does not.
We go out to market
Well, we have healthy 26.
every year for other types of coverage and to test the market to see if being self-insured is still the way to go. And by more than $1 million a year it is.
Nick, how much lower were we than the
Do
state?
you actually, this analysis is this why I asked
Over the
about it,
documents.
but we can talk about it more. I know.
700,000?
I don't have a current calculation. We're actually going to meet with them soon, next week.
We have meetings.
But I'll find that out.
I think it was 700,000 or something along the line.
I think it's
Yeah.
better. They're increasing, to see what happens with state health benefits. You may not see a big increase for 2 years, and then all of a sudden, you see these gigantic increases for like 20 or 25%. And I mean, the way they get out of that is by renegotiating different plans for their employees when they're union contracted. We don't have that luxury. We're still under it. So the state also has a policy that if our plan is more than their plan, we have to jump on their plan. I think it goes into effect next year, or is it this year? I don't remember if it was this year or next year. It's not. But we're not even close, so I'm not worried about that.
Mr. Venice, you said you'll have your analysis next week?
No, we're meeting with brokers.
Yeah, well, what I said is I'll ask them about the state health benefits.
Do you know what the gross cost is? This is obviously, this is net. This is net. And this is not including all employees. This is not excluding library employees, which are on another line item. So this is, do you know what the gross is for all enrollees, for health coverage, for health, prescription, and dental combined?
It's an incorrect statement, they're on that line.
Well, their contribution is in here.
No, but they're being part of the.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Oh, the claims. Yeah.
They're claims for that line item.
You're absolutely right. They are on here. That's right. We're doing through the chargeback. Their cost for healthcare is on here. But you know what happens is it reduces this. I'd have to look
I'm a
at
little confused about something. If the cost for their chargeback is coming out of their appropriation, which is also included in the appropriation section?
It's in here, but it's not on this sheet. If you look at my detail, it's on that sheet, which is.
Okay.
But it's probably. I think it's probably around $8 million just for the health. 8.2 maybe for the health, somewhere around there, 8. And then another 2 million.
But these numbers here, these are net of the employee contributions.
Well, this is what we have to raise.
Okay, and this is for all enrollees? All enrollees?
This is everyone.
Including retirees, that's everybody?
This is what we're raising
Okay.
for all
That's
employees.
actually different from what I originally thought. I don't want to work on this. Okay, so, all right, let me just move on. Sheet 15D, recycling number increased to be, are there a couple more employees? It was a big one. So 280 decreased to 200. And sheet 15D.
We probably, that's one of those that we probably did not get this section grant yet. But we will have it in when it gets charged against their salary. So we probably didn't have it for introduction. We usually get it by the time.
I can barely hear you.
It's probably from and I'll tell you in a second exactly what it's from, but it's probably from the grant, Clean Communities grant that we did not get awarded yet for this year. And we usually do a chargeback for the salaries for that grant. And you're not seeing it in there because we didn't get the award yet. That's mine. Pretty much. That's best for me. It's not confusing. You get a grant for salaries, and then we charge it against the regular salaries. We haven't received that grant yet, so you're not going to see it reflected in the introduced budget.
Okay. That same page, you have maintenance of public property, and then on a prior page, there was DPW and parks section. So I'm wondering, under maintenance of public property, what falls under this category that is not handled by DPW and parks division?
Say again?
On page 15D,
Right.
you have maintenance of public property.
Right.
Right, 450, salaries, 452,000.
Right.
So is that separate from, it's obviously separate from DPW, if DPW is a separate line item. but I would think that a lot
Oh,
of.
wait, no, DPW is a department. Maintenance of public property is a division of that department. So Department of Public Works, DPW, and engineering, right? So you have administration, which is what you see in the first section. And then you see parks, which is another division. And you see recycling, which is another division. Then you see maintenance of public property. Then you see vehicle maintenance.
So it's all under people.
That's all under Department of Public Works and engineering. So, and to answer your question about the recycling, it was not the grant, because the grant is in there. What it was is that we reallocated people to their correct position. There were people that were not listed in recycling and they were listed somewhere else. Ted and I sat down and restructured everyone so that they're in the appropriate department, division within his department. So it's really a shift from one division to another.
Okay, on page 15E, under health and welfare, you have alliance salaries and wages.
Right.
What alliance is that referred to?
That is, I guess it was originally under Municipal Alliance, but it's now the, what's the program? I think the name of it.
The alliance for prevention.
I think the Crossroads. Right, and it's for drug abuse, drug and alcohol abuse.
Is that one person?
Those two
Director?
people. There are two people that get paid out of that line. And then the other expense is for our portion of the counselors. And there's also a couple hundred, is it a few, I think it'd be a couple $100,000 in grant money, or at least 100,000 in grant money that they administer through the program.
Just a few more questions. On sheet 16, under construction official, salaries and wages, I had previously asked you if developers escrow is included here, and it's not. So I'm assuming, you have a lot of, who's responsible for the inspections? Is much of that done by this office, the construction official?
That is the construction official.
This is all separate. Okay.
This is an inspection, all inspections.
On sheet 17, there's a small line item there, celebration of public events, and it's $10,000. I was wondering if that referred to Middletown Day?
Nope.
No, that gets used for
That gets used for
veterans.
various other events like Veterans Day, Memorial Day,
Small amounts.
little events that small amounts are contributed towards.
I have a question about unemployment insurance. And this is on sheet 19. Does the township pay unemployment insurance premiums? I'm not sure that the arrangement is kind of unusual.
We're self-insured,
Unemployment.
and most municipalities are as well.
That's a great point.
We pay the claims after they the employees and us, through tax, pay for the administration portion of it. And then the state runs into with that fee and then bills us for it.
And on sheet 20, there's a line item that says group insurance for employees. I was wondering what's included here versus under the group insurance line on sheet 15.
That's the part that's outside of cap. They allow the increase to be outside of cap.
Can you explain a little bit about, you've got the bulk of it within the cap.
Okay, you go back to your sheet 3. 3A1, or 3B1. Okay. number on the left, the area on the left is your cap calculation. And through this cap calculation, they tell you how much you can exclude, how much needs to be, or is allowed to be excluded outside of the cap. So that it's the appropriation. They allow the increase to be outside the cap, or a percentage of the increase to be outside the cap. It's basically one of these phantom numbers that no matter how many times you do it, when you send it to the division, it'll give you a different number to put outside the cap. So I'm expecting this number to slightly change.
On page sheet 27, you have some numbers there, you have the bond numbers, notes, principal. Does that include, I don't think it includes the 500,000 payment for sanity cleanup. I think that's a separate section, a couple pages.
Yeah. That is in another section.
Sheet 28, I'm assuming
That's a deferred charge, so it's in another section. And we just published for it.
Okay, can you talk a little bit, I'm looking at sheet 20, I'll give you one of my last questions, about the money that's being raised in this current budget that is for anything related to sanity. And you mentioned at one of the last meetings that there was a $500,000 charge that's being paid for the cleanup costs, and that's $500,000 over each of the next 5 years, correct? And it looks like there's some additional monies in the budget. Is this for reconstruction then?
I'm not following what you're saying.
All right, well,
Where's the additional money? We have $2.8 million of Hurricane Sandy that we have to put in the budget this year. That's the 1/5 of the $14 million of our special emergency that we put in there. It's a little, it's the portion, our portion of it. And well, it's actually, it's the full allocation, and if you look at the revenue for 2.3 on the revenue side, so the difference is $500,000 that the municipality has to pick up to cover the cost. So there's no extra money in there for reconstruction, because that would come in the form of a bond ordinance anyhow.
Okay. Are we expecting that?
We certainly are.
Okay, so this will change somewhat.
No,
Unless
that's going to be in a bond ordinance,
Okay.
not in the budget. It will be in a bond ordinance,
Right.
which is not in the budget. And that's going to come in probably in a couple of weeks with our road projects and other capital projects that we have.
But it wouldn't be in the budget unless the payment was due this year, then that would have to be in the budget, wouldn't it?
That's a payment, no, it would be, the first debt service payment would come whenever the first debt service payment comes. We're hoping to get reimbursement from FEMA before then. So the bond ordinance is just a mechanism for us to be able to spend money, and then we worry about getting the money prior to deciding whether we need to borrow the money. So there's a whole, you're oversimplifying sometimes, but
Okay. Like, I know that it's kind of...
if it was that simple, we could get anybody to do this. That's not perfect.
Well, like I said, I mean, my questions are really intended to understand the subject matter better. It's a 60-page budget, but there's an awful lot to know. And I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Okay, is there anybody else who would care to speak to the 2013 municipal budget? Yes, Leo.
Dear Christophe, good evening. 121 Cranberry Court, Middletown. I have here, in case somebody wants to reference me to a sheet, a page number, the 2013 municipal budget. Councilman Tony Fiore gave me graciously. Thank you. And so can refer to that as an opening remark in discussing this matter. I'd just like to point out that it's relevant to this budget that the county freeholders have run a flat tax levy for 4 years in a row, flattening out at $302 million, which means, I assume, that Middletown is not sending any more money from the money it collects to the freeholders if their tax levy side of the budget is flat at $302 million. I wish it were possible to make it flat or less than flat here in this township. On sheet 3 of this document...
Leo, let me just point something out to you. The county doesn't have to refund property taxes when they lose a tax appeal like we do for the schools, which is a huge hit. So you're comparing apples and oranges.
I know the school should pay its percent, I agree, and the county should pay its.
They don't
They refund the town.
They don't pay.
They don't
They
pay
refund the
their
rest.
portion, they don't pay the school.
Well, that's
Which
like,
we do.
it's like the energy tax and whatnot. The state should give us about $4 million, I believe.
Yeah, but Leo, when you're dealing with, what were tax appeals last year? You budgeted $2 million, more than that. I mean, when you're dealing with 80% of that, if you take that off our budget, you'll be flat.
Biblically, it was advised by a woman who hounded the judge repeatedly with the same question. He wearied of her appeals and just gave in to her. So maybe you have to keep hounding the same old idea. But at any rate, I have a question on sheet 3, that why does the adopted 2013 budget appropriations exclude the minimum library tax of $3 million plus, assuming that my assumption is correct, it's being excluded.
It's not being excluded.
Excuse me?
It's not being excluded.
But,
It is in their budget.
and does it show up in the $63,418,800?
Sure it does.
Is it in there?
Yeah, I'll tell you exactly what page it's on so that you can, because I know you're a trusting man, but when it comes to dollars, you like to see them for yourself, right? Page 20.
I have no actuarial person I can hire like the municipal government can here. I don't have the resources for it.
I'm not an actuary, so they didn't hire that either. They went as high as finance director and that was it. Municipal budgets on page, for the libraries on page 20.
I would just like to point out, since I asked that bonded money, which is apparently going to happen tonight, and apparently it's planned in the future, I think you set aside $2.5 million in surplus, and my amateurly gain knowledge is the money you put in surplus allows bonding. Is that on principle correct?
No,
You have to have a certain amount of money in surplus to be able to bond.
not at all.
You can have nothing in surplus.
Surplus doesn't have anything to do with bonding, because bonding is allowing us to incur another spending source outside the budget, which doesn't require any surplus, although it does require a down payment. That down payment can come from through the budget, through the capital improvement fund, or through cancellation of other ordinances that we have, or some other mechanism where we have fund balance that we can utilize in the capital fund. But it is not required, you're not required to have surplus in order to bond. You just have to meet you can't be above your debt authorization limit of 3% of your 3 years averaged, equalized assessed value.
On page 43, where you have the Open Space Recreation Farmland Historic Preservation Trust Fund data, you have debt service of it reports a bond principal once, and then it does it on notes and capital notes, and there's an interest for each. One of the 2013 bonds, debt service, you have an interest that's 28% by my calculation on the calculator, and the second one, you have an interest that's almost 38%. Aren't we giving away to borrow? I guess this is economic philosophy, history. Aren't we giving away a lot of money to borrow money when you're paying for what's cited there is, I think, well, you have 3 entries at the bottom, $2,807,000. Isn't that giving away an awful lot of money where the typical citizen, tax-paying citizen, property owner can't even access the purchase of municipal bonds? I mean, this is playing up to the people who well-heeled already. I hate to mention professions, but there are actuarial people, underwriters, brokers, lawyers, financiers, of all sorts, who are into this bond credit thing, and it looks like government can't make it without the heavy hand of credit spending in there. You know, I guess it's the parachute when we have emergencies of various sorts. I would like to see on these resolutions and on bonds and whatnot that you not only state the principal, but you state the cost of issuance, and you state the interest, estimated interest that would be paid annually and in the long term and at the term. That's full information, full disclosure should be given to the public. Otherwise, you'll see empty chairs here. They won't be interested in coming here. There's no appreciation of the knowledge, then they won't be here to try to utilize it. I'm not sure I have it, but I'm here. Let's go on.
What was your question? Can I get back to answer your question?
My question is...
First, I did want to make a point that, yes, the columns, this is a state document, right? So the column does give you a spot for interest on notes, interest on bonds, notes and capital notes, bond anticipation notes, and bond principal. But we only have a number in 2 of those: bond payment and interest on bonds. So when the way you stated it, it appeared that we had a number on every one of those. Now, we only have 2, because what you're looking at is prior year. So we have 1 payment for principal and 1 payment for interest in 2013. The other 2 payments were for 2012. That's what we budgeted. And then the paid or charge is what we actually paid out. So when you're looking at this, you're misleading the people that can't see but can only hear, and it's misleading. Secondly, when you calculate that $643,000, you calculated it only on the payment that we're making, not on the total debt outstanding. Because on the total debt outstanding on that particular interest is $14,067,000. So the number is much different when you do that calculation, and it's an average of 4.5%. All right, so big difference from 30% based on one principal payment. And, you know, saying that all this interest is on that one principal payment. The interest is on $14 million. So, you know, to look at it that way is just another oversimplification of something that is much more complex. And the way people understand it is through what is their payment covering. It's the total debt outstanding, not the one principal payment. Second, and I guess to continue with your conversation, I'm not even sure if you had a question in there, if you were just making a statement. If you have a question, I would like to answer the question now that I've corrected some of the misinformation. Did you have a question that you were saying, isn't it spending too much money? This is open space money. This was voted on by referendum. It's been approved by the voters in town to raise this money to purchase land. And I guess if there's an issue with that, it would have to be, you know, brought up with the committee.
Regarding the swim club and the municipal government's sale of that to Ice World, I remember...
Leo, let me just stop you there. This is a time to comment on the budget. Okay, you can comment on these other items and these other, you know, initiatives during the public comment period, but this is specifically for the 2013 municipal budget.
Well, if they're going to refinance anything in the swim club, then it's involved in the budget.
We're not refinancing anything in the swim club. It's paid off like that.
Then you have received full payment for the sale of that property?
Yes, if you look at sheet 34, you'll see the information.
And if I could go on with the questions, so I'm just trying to understand the whole process. So you're not refinancing anything with the swim club. You have received full payment for the sale of that property, the Ice World. You still have purchasers of the municipal bond, if there are any, have to be collecting for a certain number of years. And I assume this government is going to pay off those bonds.
We've paid off the bonds already, like I just was saying. We've paid off the bonds. If you look on page 34 and 35, you'll see the full appropriation for the bonds. You'll see the money coming in from the sale, and it comes in as surplus. We had put it in surplus last year so that we could pay the bonds in January this year. All the bonds have been defeased. The municipality is not on the hook for a dime.
Is the money you received for the sale of the swim club currently in an escrow account?
It's currently in the pockets of the people that own the bonds because we don't. Yeah, but we know.
I had to finish my question, and while I'm talking and you're talking, then I don't hear you. So I'll be quiet and listen to what you have to say.
Okay. The question you asked 3 times. The money has been paid to the bond holders, right? It's been in the trust of a third-party agency to pay them.
It's an escrow account, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's actually, yeah, whatever they use. It's not really an escrow account, but whatever they use. And it's not, we're not on the hook, we're relieved of our duty. We are now...
So the taxpayers are clear of any financial...
Which we did this. I mean, we got to stick to the budget here, Mayor.
Yeah.
Which is
Leo, we can discuss the swim club and all that, but I think Mr. Tresente answered your question about the line item, where it appears, where the appropriation for the paying off the bond is, and that's all that we're really concerned with here. So if you have any other questions about, or any other comments about the budget in particular, you know, please let's get on with it.
Why is the debt service and the budget for municipal purposes, I believe the phrase says, includes the debt service of the school? That's the information I have gotten. Why is it being conflated?
I have no idea what you're talking about. There's no school in here.
but you have an entry that says there's a,
How many page and line item?
a debt service
Page and line item?
for municipal purposes, inclusive of the school
Leo,
debt service.
Leo, you have a page number in our budget, not the school budget, our budget, to refer to what you're talking about.
I don't have it in hand right now.
there is no line item for school budget, school debt service that we're paying.
Do you know that the school district handles its debt service entirely on its own?
This is a municipal budget, Leo. This is not the school district or not the Board of Ed budget. If you could keep your remarks strictly to our budget.
My question pertains to the budget.
You're doing a comment. That's a public comment. You could make those comments in a public comment about the school budget and the way they do their budget or how they do their debt service. But this is to be specific to this ordinance, which is this budget.
I guess the last thing, please. I think this was going over with Linda Baum, but the emergencies that have beset this township from natural disasters has ramifications on this budget. One of which is that business revenues are down, people have destruction of property, so property evaluations go down in a locale, but not in others. And so you have a situation where less revenues coming from the federal government, the state, from property taxes, which are damaged homes.
Leo, I have to stop you there. You're making a statement, an overall statement, but is this specific? Is there a line item? Is there a page number that you want to discuss in the budget that has been introduced? These statements are fine for the public comment, but specifically, there may be other folks who want to comment on this, and they're waiting for you to get to the point of a specific line item in the budget to discuss.
In the budget, why is all the loss of revenue recouped by raising the tax rate against property owners who had no damage to their homes, and there's big payoffs?
So is your
by reduced tax levies on those homes and gifts, apparently, or loans, not grants, to the property owners that damaged
Leo,
property.
again, this is a question, a general question about the budgeting process, which you could ask in any town. It's not specific to the budget that would...
You have a tax rate that's in this budget.
Leo, I know that. Line,
But I'm asking
page
you about...
15, line 13, ask a question there about...
You're trying to turn this into a discrete matter as if there are not prevailing issues on principles that affect the tax-paying citizens.
So are you asking a question so I'm clear of why the western portions of the town are paying for the destruction cost of the eastern portions of the town? Is that what I understand your question to be?
Pretty much, that's what...
Well, that's what being a large municipality
Excuse me?
is all about.
Excuse me?
That's what being a large municipality does. Okay? That's, there are some small municipalities that have suffered significant damage at the 80 to 100% level of their municipality. Do you go to them and say, why are you raising your taxes when 80% of your town was decimated just because we had 30% of the town? Are you advocating that the other 70% shouldn't pick up the cost of cleanup to that 30%? I would completely disagree with that statement. Completely.
There's $1.8 billion coming to the state to be distributed.
Right, Leo, again...
How will that money affect this budget?
Leo, that's a larger question. We're looking for specific comments on the budget that's been introduced. That's a policy issue that's above this municipality's pay grade to be able to discuss at this point. That's a state issue. We're here to talk about our municipal budget. So respectfully, I have to ask you to please stick to the municipal budget that's been
Do you
introduced.
anticipate that you'll get some money out of that 1.8 that will affect this budget? That's a
We
budget
have a
question.
line in the revenue of $2.3 million of FEMA money that we're expecting to receive. Actually, we received 2.2 of that already.
Right,
Is
the
that-
1.8 is the CDBG money, which is a different animal altogether.
In the budget.
In the budget, right.
In the budget, there's 2.8, there's $2.3 million. He's asking what revenue we're receiving
Okay.
for the storm, and that's the revenue that we're getting this year so far. Could be more, but as of now, that's what we have.
So that money's coming out of the 1.8?
That 1.8 has nothing to do with this budget.
No.
But May,
Never.
Never.
No.
it won't be in this
It will
budget.
not.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak to the 2013 municipal budget? Seeing no further members come forward, move to close the public portion. And the date for final adoption will be announced in the near future.
Second. Committeeman Fiore.
Yes.
Committeeman Mansell.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Murray. Yes. Committeeman Sedambrino.
Yes.
Mayor Schaffenberger.
Yes.
Motion carries to close public hearing with a vote date to be advertised in the future. Our next item under the 2013 budget, we have a public hearing on the Resolution 13-107, 2013 solid waste budget.
Are there any members of the public who would like to speak to the 2013 solid waste budget? Seeing no members of the public come forward, move to close the public portion, and we will be announcing a date for the adoption of the solid waste budget in the near future.
Second. Committeeman Fiore.
Yes.
Committeeman Mansell.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Murray. Yes. Committeeman Sedambrino.
Yes.
Mayor Schaffenberger.
Yes.
Motion carries to close public hearing on the 2013 solid waste budget with a vote date to be held in the future. Under our known action items, we have a public hearing on bond ordinance 2013-3087, a bond ordinance providing appropriation of $1.5 million for various field improvements thereto by and for the Township of Middletown and the County of Monmouth, New Jersey, and authorizing the issuance of $1,425,000 in bonds or notes of the Township for financing part of the appropriations.
Are there any members of the public who would like to speak to ordinance number 2013-3087? Yes, ma'am?
Middletown, 19 Court. Just a general question. At a prior meeting, Mr. Sedambrino, you commented that that this would be a revenue neutral project. That that the revenue is going to pay the cost for the debt.
When you speak of revenue, just to clarify, it's with regard to the modified field permit fees.
I believe that your comment at the prior meeting has to do with
The revenue from the
current project, the development of these fields, and the money that's being raised to do this. Your comment was that this project itself would be revenue neutral, not so much the fees, that there would be money coming in to pay the money that's going out.
That's correct.
Is that correct? Okay. Has a cash flow analysis been done to demonstrate that or show?
Are you speaking with respect to this budget? You understand how bond ordinances work, right, with respect to the budget and the amount of down payment in this budget and then future payments for debt service?
Yes, I understand that.
Okay. So with regard to...
With regard to this ordinance, and I don't have it in front of me, this is why it's a general question. You know, here we are, we're raising money, and at the prior meeting, Leo brought up, you know, can we afford to do this at this time? And the comment was made, well, there are reasons we want to go ahead and do this, and, you know, this project is going to bring in revenue through concessions or the field fees and whatever that is going to pay for this. And I'm asking if an analysis has been done.
To answer the question,
Go ahead
yes.
and go ahead and approve this ordinance.
Yes.
An analysis has been done. Who did
Yes.
the analysis?
Who did the analysis? The Township Administrator and the staff who were involved in the
Okay,
field.
there's something actually, if a document were to be requested through an Oprah request, the response, a document would be received that shows this analysis.
No, we calculate analyses, we do analyses for everything related to the budget. And this is part of the process, putting together the budget and these sort of bond ordinances.
Okay, but you're saying an analysis was done. It sounds like it was just all done in your heads. There's nothing on paper?
Now, do you have anything specific with the bond ordinance that's being passed,
No,
or
but
is
we'll go ahead and
it's going to be
approve
back and forth?
It's a little bit of stretch, but I thought if we're going to go ahead and approve it, I would like to know that this analysis...
Yes, the analysis was done, yes.
But you don't have...
As I said
anything on
before, it
paper.
was done, yes.
But there's nothing on paper.
Formal that is operable? No.
Then how do we know it was done? And it really...
Well, that's what elected officials do.
Yeah, we have staff in their normal course of their day.
All right, that's my question.
This is
You said
part of their
there's-
job.
There's nothing that's available. It was done, but there's nothing available to see. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Would anybody else care to speak to ordinance number 2013-3087? Seeing no members of the public come forward, move to close the public portion and move for adoption.
Second.
Committeeman Fiore.
Yes, with comments.
Committeeman Massad.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Murray.
Yes.
Committeeman Sedambrino.
Yes.
Mayor Schaffenberger.
Yes. Mr. Fiore.
My only comment is, I think, in working with the Shared Service Committee, working with the leagues, I commend the mayor and all those involved, the administration, of both the Board of Education and the Township Committee, for doing what is right for the athletic leagues, working on analysis of field permits and other things that would make this possible, and I look forward to putting this money in place and really having facilities that will actually reduce our costs in the future for maintenance and other variables that are being accounted for today. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. If we can, sure.
At this time, I'd like to ask the Township Committee to do a consent agenda on resolutions 13-128 through 13-139.
Move for adoption.
Second.
Committeeman Fiore.
Yes.
Committeeman Massad.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Murray.
Yes.
Committeeman Sedambrino.
Yes.
Mayor Schaffenberger.
Yes.
Motion carries to adopt consent agenda. At this time, we have resolution 13-127, resolution authorizing payment of bills for May 6, 2013.
Move for adoption.
Second.
Committeeman Fiore.
Yes.
Committeeman Massad.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Murray.
Yes.
Committeeman Sedambrino.
Yes.
Mayor Schaffenberger.
Yes.
Motion carries to adopt resolution 13-127. We have agenda items from May 20, 2013, which include proclamation proclaiming Elks Youth Week, May 19th through 25th, 2013, a proclamation recognizing Middletown Girl Scout Troop 1701 for their Promise Me campaign, the proclamation proclaiming May 2013 as Older Americans Month. Then we have representation of the 2013 Monmouth University Polling Institute e-Government Award for Best Municipal Website. We'll have approval of minutes from March 4th, 2013 executive and workshop meetings, and March 18th 2013 executive and workshop meetings. We'll have a consent agenda which will include resolutions, bingo and raffle applications, and volunteer firefighter applications. For discussion tonight, we begin with the conference room emergency usage.
Just update the committee that we should be going out to bid probably the next meeting with the changes to the conference room. As we've talked about, that's the Township's Emergency Operations Center. We did budget money a couple of years ago as part of our 911 system upgrade to upgrade that room as well, so there'll be new conference table and phone and computer connections built into the table and media setup so that we can utilize our GIS system to better manage storm response.
Hopefully it will be seldom used.
Hopefully we'll never have that.
We have the GIS contract renewal.
Just the renewal of the current arrangement we have with Mazer to help us manage our GIS system, our UWorks system.
That's principally paid through application fees. Updates are right. No, not at all.
community development mortgage cancellations, and firework applications, vacation of Paper Street. That's a portion of Platinum Drive, and the non-conforming structures and generators.
Can you just explain?
Yeah, actually,
Amy.
I asked Amy to come here and talk about the setback issue, the non-conforming structure issue while she's coming up. We are going to be proposing a modification to the fee schedule for generators. If you take a look at the memo that Joe Kuczynski sent you, we're substantially reducing the fee for most residential generators because we thought the fee was a little bit high. And we've had a lot of applications for it. One of the reasons they're as high as they are is because every generator request requires 5 separate permits and 5 separate inspections. So they're more complicated than you think. You think you buy them at Home Depot and put them in, and they're more involved in that. But we did think that we could lower the fee. So you can see the fee schedule that has been proposed. Most people will be able to utilize the lowest fee, which is $150, which will get you up to 45 kilowatt generator, which is pretty substantial. The higher fees will be more relevant to commercial operations, and even all the fees will be at least $200 or so less than they currently are once we adopt this ordinance. So we'll be in a position to introduce an ordinance at the next meeting.
It's an all-in fee?
It's an all-in fee.
I'm sorry, Amy.
Explain if you could just explain basically what we're looking to tweak in the ordinance in terms of the non-conforming setbacks.
Yeah, we're expecting a little bit more activity in rebuilding in the next couple of months. So we noticed there's a few items in the ordinance that need cleanup and clarification. So when the homeowners come, it's handled easily. Specifically, when a substantially damaged, non-conforming residential structure needs to rebuild, which we think there's going to be a lot coming soon. Under the restoration ordinance right now, they wouldn't be able to increase the height of their structure. So I think, and we all know they're going to go higher if they have to. So I think just this got missed, this part of the restoration ordinance when we amended the building ordinance. So we'd like to fix that. And then there's cleanup in the fence ordinance, which will just homeowners as they will restore their fences to clarify what they're allowed to do. And a simple cleanup for lot coverage for non-conforming structures. It's really just, we want the ordinance to match how we've been, interpreting it, just for clarification.
Amy, are there any guidelines coming out of DCA as far as handling ordinance, revising ordinances to, help with the new, height?
Building height, and not that I know of, and actually I think Jason presented to Monmouth County how we changed our ordinance sort of to show them as a guide what we've been doing there. I don't think there has been any.
DCA is taking a hands-off approach. They want the towns to deal with it on their own, in their own way.
I mean, whatever we can do to help make it easier on the folks who have to deal with this, we should do. That means taking a little.
Section 22, if you remember, right after the storm, you allowed the building height to be raised. You measured the building height to base flood elevation. But then there's another section of the ordinance that says if your structure is non-conforming in any way, so you get one setback that's just a little off, if that says you can't increase the height of your building. So it's really just cleaning up what's kind of catch-22 in the ordinance now.
Okay, thanks, Amy. Yeah.
We have an additional resolution for tonight, a proposed resolution 13-140, resolution appointing a housing authority member.
For adoption?
Second.
Mayor Fiore?
Yes.
Mayor Mansell?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Murray?
Yes.
Mayor Sedambrino?
Yes.
Mayor Schaffner?
Yes.
Motion carries to adopt resolution 13-140. And Township, please.
Mr. Massell?
To
real quick comments. Went to an event at the VFW Job Fair last week, and it was a huge success. I think they had 100 vets there in the first hour. I think they actually hired someone that first day, so that was great. Also went to the business networking group at the MAC last week, and that was a great event. I think it was the best event we've had so far. Just all the local businesses were out and networking with each other, and it was just a super event. That's all I have to plan. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Senabrino.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have nothing this evening.
Okay. Mr. Fiore.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few brief things. First, once again, with regards to the budget, again, I applaud the administration for putting together such a tight budget despite such extraordinary circumstances and the efforts that we saw with the cleanup of some of the superstore. Just a few other things. One of the things I was going to mention it in the workshop part of it, but I figure I could just give my comments at this point. But I would like to see, and I've spoken to the administrator about this briefly, and I'd like to see the township attorney if he can work with the, I guess it would be the administrator and our planning department to look at our ordinance with respect to signs. Specifically, I am noticing going around town a plethora of new LED flashing signs from everywhere I turn, whether it be a business, whether it be a church, whether it be a school. And I believe, I am not opposed to those signs. As a matter of fact, I think there's plenty of them, and I would not like to see an ordinance change, prohibiting those signs. However, I do believe that this governing body for safety issues has to look and examine with respect to how often those signs should be able to change. Also, whether scrolling messages should be allowed to be put on those signs. It is in my view, and I would work with the township attorney in looking at amending an ordinance that those signs should not change more than every 15 minutes. This way you can still get 4 messages, for example, as a baseline on your marquee, but you're not scrolling every 7 to 8 seconds that some of them do, causing a massive distraction for drivers and something that I think is going to become a huge quality of life issue as these signs become more prevalent. So I'd ask the township attorney along with the professionals to report back to this governing body if an amendment like that is legally possible. I'd like to see this governing body, I'd like to see us actually entertain such a measure. And finally, just as always, just working with the Board of Education, as I mentioned before, very excited about many of the shared services we do, and excited about moving forward on some of the initiatives such as these fields going forward. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor Murray, you're up.
Thank you, Mayor. Today I had the opportunity to go out and take a tour of Sandy Hook, and a lot of people often forget that because it's part of the Gateway National Recreation Area that it isn't part of Middletown, but it is. So there was great news from there. They're about a month ahead of cleanup. They've done some tremendous work out there. All the beaches will be open this summer. All of the parking lots will be open this summer. So that's just great news. I was invited to Running and Winning workshop seminar hosted by Women in Government. It was fantastic. It was a program for high school, junior, and senior girls. Trying to motivate young girls to get more involved in government, because there are very few of us in government, 18% in Congress and 18% in the House of Reps and 20% are senators. And the numbers are similar in New Jersey, and it's interesting because our own Lieutenant Governor was there, and it's fascinating to see why women do get involved in government and why they don't, and many of them, interestingly, it centers around circumstances and situations with their children. So that was very fascinating. And just a reminder, on May 8th at the Tanya Keller Center, there will be the Department of Banking and Insurance and FEMA on hand to help out with any of the Sandy questions that anyone may have. I believe it's from 12 to 8 at the Tanya Keller. 12 to 7, sorry. And that's all I have, thank you.
Okay. Just a few things. I attended the Monmouth Conservation Foundation meeting about 2 weeks ago, and it was a great meeting. They really go through all the projects they're working on. We tend to forget that they're a county-wide organization, even though they do a lot of work here in Middletown. And I was pleasantly surprised to hear them announce that they will be purchasing Chris's Landing, or Chris's Marina as it's more commonly known. In the near future, they're partnering up with several nonprofit organizations and green acres, and it's really a great thing for the township that it will remain a marina and in perpetuity. The Veterans Affairs Committee that Mr. Marcel just mentioned, the chairman of the Veterans Affairs Committee came in to see me on Saturday and was raving, as Mr. Marcel said, about the success of the job fair. That there were quite a few vets who were hired, several more who might be hired, who were hired on the spot, I should say, and several more who will get jobs out of it. And they're planning on doing another one and maybe expanding its reach with other businesses. So that's a good thing. We should all be very proud of the Veterans Affairs Committee that we have here in town. And I'm surprised Mr. Fiore didn't say anything about the gift card. Okay, but about a week and a half ago, I, along with Mr. Fiore and Deputy Mayor Murray, distributed about 120 gift cards, $1,000 Home Depot gift cards at the Port Monmouth Firehouse. And we also presented the firehouse with a $15,000 check from the Middletown Disaster Relief Fund, which is a private entity that Mr. Fiore has set up right after Sandy, and it's raised a lot of money in terms of a bulk number, but when you distribute it among several hundred families, it doesn't amount to tremendous money, but it will certainly help. And we're hoping to do this over and over again as we raise more money. Straight from there, I was able to go to a fundraiser at Rutgers Stadium. A bunch of the mayors from towns who were affected were invited to do the ceremonial coin toss, and all the proceeds from the game were going to the governor's relief fund, which will be distributed to the shore towns and different organizations. So that's a great thing. And finally, I wanted to thank all the people, and also Mr. Nelson, for taking time out of a Sunday to complete these deals with the gathering up the easements to allow the Army Corps flood control project to go forward, and the cooperation of all these folks with these easements really going to make life a lot easier and allow this project to go forward. So they really deserve a huge pat on the back and great appreciation from the whole town. And with that, I'll open it up to the public. Anybody care to speak? Yes, ma'am. Before we get started, I just want to remind everybody to please keep your comments to 5 minutes, give your name and address, and I will enforce the 5-minute rule. If folks have complained in the past that, gee, you let so-and-so go on and on, I have to get up for work tomorrow. So I'd appreciate it if you can keep your comments specifically to 5 minutes, and if you need more time, we'd be happy to stay afterwards and chat a little bit more.
Hi, I'm Judy Kravetsky, 29 Broadmoor Drive in Lincroft. My questions really refer to or about the potential improvements to the Acme Road in Lincroft, and I was wondering if you had any updated information regarding the county's study of Route 520 corridor, because I think at last year's meeting I was told that the improvements to the Acme Road were contingent upon the completion.
I know they were doing studies about the roundabouts and all these, the feasibility of certain modifications to 520 that would go along with. Tony, have you heard anything more?
I have not heard an update from the county. I don't know that the road was contingent upon it. It was sort of dependent upon the outcome of the study, but it wasn't necessarily so that if they decided not to do the roundabouts, the road wouldn't happen. So they're connected, but not necessarily contingent on one another. So just to be clear, but I will call the county and find out. Now you mentioned I haven't heard from them in quite a while.
Right. Is there anything else, Tony, that you can recommend that we do to try to move this along? Because as virtually anyone in Lincroft can tell you, this is an obvious necessity for safety. It would really, really cut down on traffic problems and potential accidents.
One thing I'm sorry, Tony, to cut you off. I'm going to be speaking with Freehold's director, Tom Arnone, either tomorrow or Wednesday, so I will bring it up with him directly. And a lot of times, he will have to ask his engineer to see where, he won't know maybe off the top of his head to see where those studies are. But it is good for maybe you to reach out and say, gee, you know, I'm from Lincroft, and we just wanted to see, you know, the status of this project. And, you know, the squeaky wheel, they say, it is good to keep on their radar too, because they do have a lot of projects around the county, and you want to make sure that we get the attention that we need.
Okay, so I will,
And we will too, yeah, between all of us, we should be able to get some movement on it.
Yeah,
thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else care to speak? Yes, ma'am.
I agree with Mr. Food. Oh, sorry, Carol, no. Carol, yeah, that's not me. No. Hi, Carol Schwabel, 79 Hamilton, Leonardo, New Jersey. I was just thinking, I agree with you, Mr. Fiore, about the signs. I know there's a lot of them. Some of them are so big, they do distract drivers. But I just wanted to highlight the resolution you passed today, 13132, which is advocates for disabled Americans, Schwabel and Stoney, v. Middletown, where it was the ADA complaint. I just want to make sure that people knew that. And there is a transition plan that you're working on over the years in the consent order. I did want to highlight a couple of things along those lines. I'm speaking, I guess, especially to Mr. Nelson, since he's in the know. But one of the features of it is maintenance of accessible features under the ADA. And I'm just cracking up a little bit because when we pulled in tonight, there's a gigantic garbage pail in the access aisle on one of the accessible parking spots out there. So it's sort of ironic, but they are supposed to be kept clean, you know, like for snow and all that stuff. Another one along those lines, I was wondering about, I read something in the paper that I wanted to check out. A woman had a complaint letter in, I think it was the Monmouth Journal, about the planning board experience she had. And I don't think that I was accurate this week, but she's an older woman who has a disability, and she wanted to make a comment to the planning board about a housing development being built near her. And what the article noted was that, or letter, that you can have to go in person to speak to the planning board, and that her daughter wanted to read something for her, but was not allowed to. I just want to check on that because I read something from the mayor about affirmative affordable housing, and he did mention that you can either write or orally.
But I think in testimony, it's a different story in front of the planning board, right, Tony?
Yeah, it's two different things. If you want to express a comment or about a policy, you can write to the township committee all you want. But in a planning board proceeding, you can't. The planning board can't accept testimony on behalf of someone else or written testimony, because under the rules, you have an applicant, for example, has to have the opportunity to cross-examine a person who submits evidence. So that's why the person submitting evidence has to be in attendance at the meeting. That's really, it comes out of case law, and that's the way planning boards have to operate. The board really didn't have a choice.
So technically, that letter was kind of out of line.
The letter was really very wrong.
I think, you know, I know that's why I want to check it out.
Yeah, but the board's not really allowed to do what they wanted them to do.
Is there any wiggle room on that? Because as Mr. Nelson can tell you, on the ADA part of it, there are reasonable accommodations that might be made. I don't know what, but maybe give her, you know, a phone at home or some other way to get her input indirectly. I saw that they are kind of jammed in there. But the point is there any other accommodations I would expect?
Well, I think it's something the legislature have to take a look at, because the procedures that planning boards and zoning boards follow pretty well defined by the law. And
it's a good question.
It's a very interesting question, because things are changing, but you'd have to literally find a way to physically accommodate the person to be present, like a conference call or something of that nature. Then you'd have to verify that it is the person.
even there's even issues with that, because and this is similar to it's really almost like going to court where people who are the decision makers, in this case the planning board, have to not only be able to hear the testimony, but they got to be able to view the witness and the veracity and so forth. So but it is an interesting question, but those are requirements of municipal land use law, and it's an interesting question though, as to how certainly reasonable accommodations would have to be made in those circumstances, but at the same time have to meet the objectives of the ability to be cross-examined and so forth. So it would have to be effective in order for that accommodation to work in conformance with the municipal land use law. It's interesting, though.
I didn't realize about the dam and stuff that you're talking about. Another thing along the same lines, and you probably can't do anything about that, but I thank you for passing the resolution. I think it's wonderful after all these years. But I went to a Thompson meeting a couple months ago, and I know you appoint the people, but I know it's in one of these gray areas. However, I wanted to let you know that, in fact, I wrote a complaint on it in March about this, but there's so much noise coming from the vent system or the heater system. You can't basically hear what's going on. There's problems, real problems with ADA stuff. When you go in the door, it's like an angle like this with no level landing. So it's very dangerous and very illegal. And I don't know if anyone's looking at and there's other things too, with access there. But one thing I know, and I'm sure that Brian knows, one of the things you look at is changing policies and procedures and people's awareness or attitude. And another person and I brought up the fact that it was difficult.
Should we work up to the 5 minutes? We're going to have to move along.
Okay, this is it. The chairperson said, well, I can hear, so there's no problem. Now there's a problem with that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else care to speak? Yep.
David Stockley, 121 Cranberry Court, Middletown. I have been reading Milton Friedman's book, Free to Choose, and on page 268 of that 1979 copyrighted book, Milton Friedman quotes John Maynard Keynes' book, The Economic Consequences of the Peace. This is right after World War I. And in John Maynard Keynes' book, on page 234, Milton Friedman quotes the following. It's just 3 times removed coming from me. Quote, I might put in some bracketed additions, but at any rate, this is the quote. There is no subtler nor surer means of overturning the existing basis of society than to debauch the currency. Now we all know the currency is being debauched. That's my opinion. The process of debauching, corrupting the economy engages all the hidden forces of economic law on the side of destruction. And that's not creative destruction, as some economists are using that word, which benefits the economy. You just make a better car, a better computer, and it destroys the earlier generations. So it engages all the hidden forces of economic law on the side of destruction, and does in such a manner, and this is the part that gets me, that not one man in a million is able to diagnose. Now I've got 3 documents from this government on and the school board and the county on the tax budgets, and I find that these things are subjective, they're extremely abstruse, and the movement of information from one sheet to another is extremely hard to trace for me, but who am I? I have nothing in the actuarial, accounting, financial business. I guess the point I was making inappropriately when I should have been addressing line items is as follows. raising taxes through property taxes is very retrogressive. The whole thing needs to be reformed. The whole system of property taxes needs to be reformed. It will take some very intelligent, determined people in this state to begin that, let alone to effect it to some termination. This methodology of taxing the people through their property is, because of its retrogressiveness, extreme retrogressiveness, is essentially inequitable. It is a very unfair, on balance, a very unjust method of taxing the homeowners and property owners in New Jersey. Thank you for letting me express this opinion. I guess that's what I was trying to get through my inappropriate questions. So I've said it twice. Thank you very much.
Ears, Leo. Thanks. For anybody else who care to speak? Yes, ma'am.
Linda Bowman, Main Court. And just a couple comments, be real quick. This is regarding a couple of resolutions. Resolution 13139. There was a list of vendors that was supposed to be attached to that, or rather the attachment is referenced in the resolution. Can that be posted online? It is. It was already done? I didn't check. Thank you. And also resolution 13129. Forgive me if you covered this tonight. We're jumping back and forth between these things. This refers to project number 1332-00022. And what specifically, what is that project that this is for? And this is the Department of Environmental Protection, Green Acres and Aging Resolution.
I would
that grant for $487,000.
Yeah, this is, I couldn't tell you specifically which project it's for because there's so many going back, but it's basically our sort of reapplication for our annual allocation of green acres reimbursement. So I can find out specifically, but it's kind of irrelevant. They owe us so much more money than this includes.
Okay, so
it's more, that's more technicality.
Okay. Just one other comment. Mr. Estelle mentioned a couple of great events that you went to, and one was the business networking event in the MAC. I was also there, and it was a wonderful event. Gloria Lee, who's in charge of planning, along with the other people she worked with, did a really wonderful job. Tons of food, way too much almost. Also the job fair at the VFW, I was there as well, and they did a great event. I understand some veterans jobs supposed to be here. And they actually had a whole lot of people that showed up for the, in the morning, for a resume class on how to do their resumes, which I actually missed, but I did volunteer services to our veterans for those who might need help actually creating them. Just something, some of them may not have the word processing skills or the typing skills. So anyway, those were great events, and thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Question about resolution 13128 about the easement, conservation easement work. It says it's lot 1, block 1045. What property is this?
This, I believe the one you're trying to follow, I believe it's the Sloan Kettering property. So in the
conservation easement is already part of the property?
Yes, there's approximately 18 acres, principally in the rear of the property. That
I should work there.
Oh, so you know, yeah, there's a lot of acreage on that.
Basically, there's a portion of the property also.
Yes, there is.
Definitely.
And also the awarding contract with the expert consultant, there's something you can do with the Buy Middletown program. But is it possible to find a consultant that lives in Middletown?
Okay. Not this one.
Yeah.
It's Aon.
It's Aon.
I don't know. If there is a
Somerset, so, yeah.
Yeah, Hewitt is one of the biggest actuaries in the world, if not the biggest.
Yeah, there's no big contract. And just in terms of what Leo was saying about the retrogressiveness of the tax system, I don't know if that's a word actually. I find it is
Regressive.
I find it surprising that good conservative republic would want the wealthy people or the people who planned ahead and didn't have their property flooded to subsidize those who didn't plan and got flooded out at the charity was looking care of that in the views of the good Republicans. Anyway, or even listing the Army Corps of Engineers in their corporate projects.
We had a good Democrat in Washington give us more money, we wouldn't be in this situation now, would we? That's right.
Obama projects, right?
That's right. He gave much more to Louisiana than did New Jersey, I can verify that. I was just in Mobile, they're not doing bad.
Thank you.
Are there any other members? Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Don Watson from 1 Collison Drive. The gentleman was asking, or Carolyn was asking before about the letter in the paper. I was wondering if those rules apply to the zoning board also, where the witnesses have to be present. Because I was at a zoning board meeting at one time, and there was a family going for a variance, and there was nobody objecting. Nobody present objecting to that variance, yet the zoning board member told the family that it looked like they had a disgruntled neighbor, yet that neighbor was not present to do any testifying, and they denied them the variance. But
Could have been from a previous meeting.
no, it was the only
Same meeting?
I would suggest, generally, without having been there, I would suggest it's probably not an appropriate thing to say, this hearsay.
They had an attorney present too, and he didn't even rebut it.
Yeah, without being there, and it's not to say that, just like in the courtroom, there's many cases overturned because people, judges allow testimony to go forth that necessarily shouldn't and doesn't follow rules of evidence and so forth. I mean, it happens.
There was no testimony to go forth.
I'm not saying, I wasn't there, I don't know.
No, I saw
there. I haven't seen this letter that was referred to, but the appropriate way for it to be handled, if any, if there's any testimony to be proffered, it should be in person.
Right. Okay, I was just curious about that. Thank you for your time.
Okay. Would anybody else care to speak? Seeing no further members of the public come forward, and see no further members of the public at all. Move to close the public portion and move for adjournment.
Second.
Committeeman Story.
Yes.
Committeeman Stone.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Murray.
Yes.
Committeeman Sedambrino.
Yes.
Mayor Sharpenberg.
Yes.
Motion carries to adjourn.